Happy face.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. We're live. My name is Melanie Dizan. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis Phinney Foundation, and I am here today with the Narciso family, my first full family. We're still waiting for Sophia. She's probably going to come, but we're going to have the whole family here, which is really fun. So I'm going to let you guys tell me who you are. I'm going to go along my screen, and to my colleague, Sam, why don't you tell everybody who you are, Sam?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Sam. I also work at the Davis Phinney Foundation. I am the program associate specifically for Mel, so I get to work on all of the great content and videos that you guys see every day. I am the oldest daughter of the Narciso family. And yeah, thank you, Mel, so much for having us today.
Awesome. Thanks. Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Narciso. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2003. My wife started seeing symptoms in 94 when we got married, and you can actually see on our wedding pictures, my hand is already like this.
Oh, wow.
I had DBS in 2011, and it's been a journey.
Right. Thank you. Charlene.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene Narciso, and I am Joe's wife, and my beautiful children are here. And we have been married now since 1994, and I have been his care partner along the journey.
Great. Thank you. And Xander. Xander might be frozen.
Might be.
Xander, okay, we're gonna move on. So, okay, Joe. Oh wait, Xander. Okay.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I accidentally turned on airplane mode.
Okay. Tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Alexander. I'm the youngest child of the Narciso family, and my dad has had Parkinson's my entire life. So,
yeah. All right, good. We're gonna dive into that. So, Joe, let's talk a bit about that. You were diagnosed, but 10 years prior or 11 years prior, you were actually starting to feel or notice some symptoms. So what were the initial symptoms? And then, what was that initial 10 years like before you got diagnosed?
The initial 10 years, it was really about 5 years that I was looking for a diagnosis. I went to see every doctor in New York City, including all Michael J. Fox's doctors. And they were like, no, go home. You're just nervous. You'll be fine. Just don't worry about it. You don't have Parkinson's. And finally, in 2003, we got the diagnosis. And my wife started seeing symptoms there, Sophia.
Yeah.
My wife started seeing symptoms in 1995, 96. She used to work in a nursing home, so she recognized the symptoms. You want to talk about that, Sean?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. So I happen to have a job as a feeder and transporter during my college years. And this was in the 1980s. And so at 5 o'clock, there was one man who sat a table away from me who was extremely Parkinsonian, and it was as if like the dopamine had worn off by that time. Treatment was extremely different at that time. So I said to myself, that's the one disease I never want this poor disease. This poor man his food would drop on the floor. He wouldn't be able to get his spoon to his mouth. So am I having a repeat?
No.
Okay, Neko? Okay, so I was with Joe and Samantha actually in our apartment. We lived in Brooklyn, and Samantha was 2 years old, or not even 2. And Joe had been working on a job that required him to contact Australia and Japan. So his hours were different than ours at the mine. And he was staying awake with caffeine. But the first thing I noticed was the cogs wheel. One morning he was trying to eat his cereal, and he was bringing his spoon up to his mouth the same way the patient had been at the nursing home years prior.
And we both wrote it off to caffeine, but then I started noticing things on like the softball field. I was getting slower, and I was stiffer, and I started dragging my right leg, and then my handwriting got really small, and so it became pretty clear to us.
Yeah.
No one was believing me though because of Joe's age.
Right. So how old were you at this point, Joe?
I was in my late 20s. I was 27.
And it happened that I had postpartum with my second pregnancy. So by this time we had moved to New Jersey, and I went to a therapist I had found, and I said to her, I think my husband has Parkinson's disease. And she looked at me and didn't say anything, and she waited for me to continue. And it turned out that her father was in the Korean War, and on his Navy vessel, they had a crew where a large percentage of the people who were serving on the crew ended up being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
And her father was one of them. So she referred us to Stanley Fon, Dr. Yar. I think I'm correct with the first name.
Yeah.
And that was the first person who Joe had seen, and they just couldn't fathom that he had Parkinson's, so they wouldn't diagnose him.
Oh, so how did you finally get diagnosed?
We kept trying different doctors, and we went to a doctor at Columbia Presbyterian, and he said he did some testing and the typical stuff, and he said, I went to see him 2 or 3 times, and he finally said, look, we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't think this was Parkinson's disease. So, and it was actually a relief for me because it was, I knew it was going on. I just didn't want to think I was crazy.
Right. Yeah. After a while, you're like, well, I know something is not quite the way it should be. So, Charlene, were you with him when he got that diagnosis that day?
Yeah, there's a pretty well-known family story with that, because I had been now, if you think about it, I had been on this journey by myself for several years. So I was already convinced that he had Parkinson's disease. So the first thing when we went, it was almost, there's a book at the time that was pretty well known, Tuesdays with Maury.
Yeah.
And I remember going up to Columbia. We went on the Garden State and went over the George Washington Bridge. And I thought of that because I was thinking, when I come out and see the same scene, everything will be the same, but I'll be completely different.
Oh, wow.
And I went in, and he was diagnosed, and I famously asked, can my children get this? That's what I asked. So
that was the first thing she said.
That was the first thing
that
she
was
said?
The first thing she said. The doctor said, you have Parkinson's disease. She said, can my children get this?
Because that was my greatest fear at the time. I was 29 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And I had been living with this in my head. I had diagnosed him myself years before. So I went through all that. I went through that sadness and that experience of him being diagnosed, because I diagnosed him.
Yeah.
So I had
right.
just
And you had two little people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest fear, was creating an issue for them where they would get sick. So what could I do to stop this from happening to them?
Right.
And what can I do to get Joe better?
Yeah.
So
Joe, what was that ride home like? What was that feeling like? What did you guys talk about?
I was an actor.
Yeah.
And so the doctor had told me that, I had 10 good years, but not much more than that. So my worry was how am I going to feed my family? I also was working at Deutsche Bank at the time, so I considered stopping acting, but Charlene was like, no, you're not going to stop acting. I was primarily a voiceover guy. So when I figured as long as I could speak English, I'd be able to make a living. But my voice abandoned me 10 years later,
Hmm.
and it made it, where I on disability.
Yeah. So you did make it 10 years.
I mean,
continuing to work.
I worked until 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I started writing. I started doing other things to try and, keep working. But
Right.
you need to be in pretty good control of your body and your voice to be an actor. So
Yeah. So what were the initial, we're going to get to you guys, I promise. We're going to get to you guys. But in terms of treatments, Joe, what were the initial treatments that you tried?
the first thing they put me on was selegiline. Then a year or two later, they added amantadine. Then they added Mirapex. And the funny thing about Mirapex is, all the side effects from Mirapex. Mirapex makes you compulsively eat, makes you sexually compulsive, makes you gamble, makes you shop, and one of those things. And I had a couple of them. I gained 40 pounds. But the funny thing was, I was the voice of Mirapex. I was doing commercials.
Oh my.
I was doing commercials, and I was like, this is bizarre.
That is the ultimate in bizarre.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So how long were you on that drug? And did you know, I mean, did you feel it right away? Like, wow, I got these.
Well, we went to the doctor and we said, Sophie, is that you making noise?
No, she's muted.
Okay.
All right.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
The how long were you on Mirapex?
I was on Mirapex for what is that?
Don't know.
I don't know.
I think it might be Mal.
No.
Mom?
I'm staying completely still so that I don't contribute to the.
Anyway, I was on Mirapex for.
Oh, it's you?
Yeah, it's
Where is Aria?
All right. Sophia's going to go find her baby. Anyway, Dad, please keep going with the Mirapex.
So I was on the medicine for 6 years. It made me compulsively write. I was incredibly productive during that time. I didn't sleep more than an hour and a half a night though, so I was manic. I was completely losing my mind. But
that is not one I have heard yet. It made you compulsively write.
Yeah,
like your creativity was just off the charts.
Off the charts. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
But it wasn't pleasant for my wife. I mean,
right.
it was a very frustrating time. And the doctor kept telling me that there's not side effects. I'm like, I gained 40 pounds. I'm compulsive. I'm up all night writing in my office. And finally, when I got DBS, I came off the medicine.
Okay. So Sam, you are 2 or 3 when he gets diagnosed. When do you, like, you're seeing your dad this entire time, right? And all of you are seeing him this entire time. When do you figure out something is not quite like every other dad?
So my dad and I used to be actually very active together. I was out of Sophia and I. Xander is a lot younger than the two of us, so we have kind of split childhoods. But out of Sophia and I was the more sporty, athletic one. So my dad and I would go skiing every winter and we'd play baseball all summer long. And I think the first time that I kind of noticed, the first time that I was like, maybe something's wrong, but I didn't really think of it. I remember was when I was like, can we go skiing this year? And we didn't go. And I didn't, like, there wasn't really an explanation. I think it was just like we were busy or something like that, but it had been such a yearly tradition for the two of us since I was 5 that it was weird that that was happening. But I think, and Sophie, I think you also would probably remember this, the first summer that I feel like we really noticed that our lives were much different than those of our friends was the summer that dad had started Miraplex, is what you were saying, correct?
Mirapex.
Because at a similar time, that was also when Xander was born. And in addition, my mom had gotten several concussions. So it was this crazy summer of my mom was very ill due to head trauma, obviously. And then, you know, there's a new baby in the house. And then in addition, my dad was just acting very bizarrely. Like I remember one time I like looked out the window and dad's just like sprinting down the block at like walking down the street very quickly after my mom. And I was like, what's going on? I don't know why everybody is outside and we're all in here and there's a baby and I'm very confused. For me, I think that was kind of the first moment. They didn't tell us though that dad had Parkinson's until after Xander was born. We did not know before that.
Okay, so you were 13 years old?
I was 13 when I found out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that,
And
yeah.
You knew there was something wrong at that point.
Yes.
When I told the two of them, I said, you know, Daddy's going to be home now. I didn't tell them until I was on disability.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was still going into the city every day, and I was still working on projects, and I was still very active as an actor. And I was playing softball in a few leagues, and I was still trying to maintain my life.
But
And,
we could tell that something was wrong by that point.
And when I told them, Sophia said to me, "Daddy, you don't have to get a job to pay for the bills or anything."
Yeah, that's what Sophia said. I believe I was just like, oh gosh, like he's dying, blah, 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 blah. And Sophia has always been the economic sister to make sure that we have enough money and are not starving on the street. Correct, Sophia?
Unmute yourself, Sophia. Can you unmute yourself? I can't unmute you because you, okay. So how are you, Sophia?
Good, how are you?
Good, and is your daughter with you, next to you? Okay, we have to see her face just because
She has the best
kids
face
are the
in the
best. Hi, sweetness. Hi. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Aria. Hello.
You're on camera. Okay, so Sophia, so you were 9 or 10 at that point, 10. So what was that like, Joe and Charlene? What was that like to tell, to kind of say it to them? Oh, sweet.
It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking hearing Sophia worrying about money like that. I mean, we definitely had things to worry about. There was no question. But we didn't want them to worry about it.
Right.
We struggled with where we were able to save the house. Our car was repossessed at one point. We went through some dark times. And the last thing I wanted was for my children to know that we were going through dark times.
Right.
So,
Charlene, what about you? You might not be able to.
Thank
You're good.
Yes.
Oops.
You muted yourself again.
you muted, Sean.
Oh my goodness. I think what my mom's going to say is that she was always very worried about the two of us and then the three of us.
Uh-huh.
There she goes. Hi, Mom.
Yeah, the basement.
Hi. It said the host had muted me. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So, what I wanted to say was that it was quite obvious that Joe was sick. It was very difficult for me because I was very young and I didn't have the support around me because we had to keep it quiet. So if I mentioned anything to anybody, I felt like I was being disloyal to him and to our family. But it was really obvious that something going on, and what was frustrating was people were making their own assumptions as to why I had dropped out of what we were doing and why Joe was slurring his words. And
yeah,
I used to measure his health by his shoe. So when he first started showing more significant more significant symptom.
Symptoms.
I think her connection is just not awesome out there.
Yeah, so you gotta get out of the basement.
Mom, go to the living
Partner
room.
showing more significant symptoms. He would drag his left foot, and it's around the same time as my left foot came out. It was a little bit later after Daniel Day-Lewis show, so my left received, but I always do because the front would be scuffed, and the front of one of his feet would of his shoes, and then we'd have to replace the shoes because one shoe would be ruined. And he also wore a backpack because he had two full-time jobs, and he would wear his backpack everywhere, and eventually he carry his backpack. And then he stopped carrying his backpack. Losses that I saw go around, and I felt almost like a relief that the children were being told the truth because they were such smart girls to begin with, and nothing was going on, and it was kind of great to let the elephant out, to talk about the elephant in the room with them. And then the other thing was with the Verpex. It was a very difficult time as a care partner. You want can you hear me?
You've
Not great.
jumping in and out.
Yeah, you're really jumping. Oh, there's
okay,
Xander.
I'm sorry.
Saves the
Let me
day.
come up here.
Xander saves the day.
Thank you.
Now, if I could interrupt and ask Sophie a
this
quick
better?
question, 'cause
Yes.
I think she kind of has a good story about it.
Yes, for sure.
So I know that Sophia, with the two of us, we obviously had very different reactions to Dad's Parkinson's. And I remember when he got DBS, both of us were at school. I was at play practice, but you were in middle school. And I'm just wondering, for you personally, what was it like noticing that Daddy was sick? Because I think for me, and this is obviously why I'm working at the Davis Finney Foundation, it's Parkinson's is kind of like what I think of, but I think you think of Dad more holistically. So I guess from your perspective, what was it like kind of seeing that?
Fine. I don't really see Dad as sick. I think I see him as, excuse you. I think I see him as more just like a person with differing abilities than mine. And we come up with like different ways to enjoy life together. But I've never had like a reaction that's been one of panic in regards to his diagnosis. Even when I was young, as far as I can remember, I don't think that I've ever been emotionally affected in such a way that's made life difficult for me. Dad and I are very close, and we enjoy doing a lot of things together, but I would say that like out of all of the things we talk about, his diagnosis is like probably bottom of the list, because it's just not something that I feel the need to ruminate on. And if he feels like he wants to talk about it, then we can, but
He is me.
I also just don't feel like it's that big of a, not that big of a thing, but it's not something that defines him as a person in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
sorry.
interesting. Really different takes. I think it's an important thing for people with families to understand that every child is going to take it differently. Everyone's going to experience it differently. Xander, what about you? You've certainly never known anything but Parkinson's with your dad, but what is it like for you?
Don't laugh at me.
No, not you. This interview is chaotic. Now Bachi's kissing Mom.
So my dad has always had Parkinson's disease. It was never like there wasn't like a change at all. It's always just been him. And I feel like the first time like I realize that like that's not how all dads are. Like not every dad. It's actually this really weird situation, which was in first grade, and this girl named Rose, her father got her milk from Starbucks, and I was like, "Hey, Daddy, can we go get milk from Starbucks?" And he's like, "No, I gotta go home and lay down." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Because I have to."
Yeah.
And it was like 3 p.m. So
Right.
I was very confused. Like,
Right. You're like, why can't we just go get some milk? I don't understand.
yeah. Also, I hate milk, so I don't even know I wanted it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always sort of just been my dad with his Parkinson's disease, and I'm not okay with it, definitely, but I'm used to it. And we've had like our conversations don't really revolve around his Parkinson's disease. That's really more of Sam's thing.
Mhm.
I sort of just actually, sorry. Something his Parkinson's disease has affected my life, like really in a big way. And so I want to become an actor, just mainly so I can get like a huge reward or like an Oscar or whatever, so I could give it to Dad.
Oh.
Because like it's like what really bothers me the most is that he's one of the funniest people I know. I'm not saying the funniest person I know because I'm the funniest person I know.
Wait, Joe, not the funniest. Let's be clear here.
I'm the funniest person I know. I'm the funniest person in this family.
That's so cute.
Yeah,
Anyway.
well that's very sweet. Yeah. Yeah, you're sad that he's not doing what he really wants to do and could do and did do.
Yeah, and he's so good at it too. So like
Yeah.
the fact that like his Parkinson's just sort of had to like drive him off the rails, like it's like I don't know the correct term was like it just sucks.
Yeah. I think that's the correct term.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. So Joe, you I want to talk a little bit about you got to a real tough place before you got DBS. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So in 2009, 2010, I was taking up to 19 pills a day, 7 different medications, every different kind of sleeping pill. I told you I was sleeping maybe an hour and a half a night. It was really dark. I wasn't breathing properly. Charlene was noticing in my sleep. I would choke myself awake because my chest wasn't expanding properly. So we got DBS in 2011, and the programming of the device at first was really good. I was doing really well. Excuse me, but then I went to. I started deteriorating pretty quickly, and by 2017, I was in a wheelchair.
So that's with DBS.
It was with DBS, yeah.
Wow.
And
You just couldn't move, couldn't stand up, balance anything.
I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I was talking to one word sentences. And my doctor wanted leaving New Jersey to go to New York, and I just didn't think it was practical to go with her. So I looked for a new doctor, and I found the doctor. It was very close to my house, and it's Dr. Arash Fazil, and he was amazing. He saw me for 2 hours a visit, which is unheard of. I said to him, "How do you make money seeing me for 2 hours a visit? I mean, it doesn't make any sense." But he was like, "I think I can help you." So I had a bunch of appointments with him for 2 hours, and he just tweaked the DBS. And Charlene likes to tell this part of the story.
Charlene, you want to jump in? You're muted. Hang on.
Mel's gonna fix it. Mom, you're back.
Thank you, Mel.
Nope, you muted yourself.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute you. Don't touch anything. There we go. Okay, you're unmuted, but for some reason we can't see your face right now.
Okay.
I look just like her.
So I just wanted to, I wanted to apologize for before when I was talking. I didn't realize nobody could hear me. And one of, I will answer this question in 1 second. The only thing I wanted to say regarding Joe's diagnosis when he was younger is that because he was almost an anomaly in our community of Parkinson's patients, we could not other young onset Parkinson's patients. And when he had his DBS placed in 2011, we didn't have anyone to refer to really to see what we should be looking for in regards to afterwards, after we've had it placed, what is the right procedure to get it programmed.
Mm-hmm.
It was an up and coming new science in our country. So the difference between our experience and the experience of someone today is very remarkable. There's so much more support.
Right. They have MRI guided placements of the leads now, which when they put my leads in, they actually put in the wrong place, and the doctor had to take it out and replace it.
Oh, wow.
And the rep that was in the surgery with me said, "You're lucky it was Dr. Osme, because most doctors would have left the leads where they put them and tried to fix it with programming."
Yeah.
So DBS has greatly improved that,
but finish the story.
It's really difficult for a care partner. It was really difficult for a care partner to have expectations from the physician that was treating your partner who you're taking care of, because I have no reference. If you have an illness that you're familiar with, you can have a reference to see. You can check it. You can check to see how this is going, because you have some previous information, prior information, and
so
with Dr. Fazal, by the time Joe had been to Dr. Fazal's office, we had already been trying on different braces for his legs. We were thinking about surgery for his legs. We were thinking about adding an additional
I walked like this. I walked like this is a straight foot and this one was pointed at the other foot.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We had him fitted for thigh-high braces, and then also for calf braces. And I'm going along with everything, not because I'm keeping an open mind. I'm trying really hard to see what will stick against the wall. And so the day that we went to see Dr. Fazal, we're naturally optimistic. So we're happy with the half glass full. And we were happy with everything that we've been given before, because we had been thankful. So when we were sitting with Dr. Fazal that day, it was just the same as it had been for a long time. And I was sitting there, and a lot of times, to be honest with you, I would get very tired when I would go there, because I would give somebody else the responsibility of being with Joe for a few minutes. So I would start relaxing just for a little while. And then out of nowhere, he would go out and he'd do his walk in the hallway to see how his gait was. And then they'd do the finger testing, and he took out the machine. And out of nowhere, Joe went from having 1 or 2 sentences over the last month or 6 weeks. He had dwindled down to just constantly thanking me, which I'm so grateful for, or just talking to us with what exactly he had to say, and that was it. It's out of nowhere, he starts talking a mile a minute, and he starts talking and can't be quiet, and it was a miracle. And it was so Joe said, "Oh my gosh, this is just like Star Trek." And that was the beginning of a revolution for him, where he came home, and I think our whole family kept our mouths just fell open for a while, because we had adjusted to a different way of living.
Yeah.
I was in a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair speaking in one-word sentences, and literally at the flick of a switch on the DBS, I walk 2 miles a day now.
Wow.
I can carry on a conversation with you.
So I think so there, there are so many people, and you had nothing happened except for you had a good programmer.
Yes.
And this is something that people are struggling with so often, right?
Yeah.
They have this device in them. They are doing what they're supposed to do. And they also, and I don't know if this was you, but many people have that belief of, well, the programmer, like there's something extra wrong with me because clearly the programmer couldn't make it work.
I mean, I thought this is just the progression of the disease.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I am in the progression. This is what's happening to me, and what am I going to do?
What was the difference when you were communicating with this new doctor? What did he do differently than what you were experienced with your last programmer?
When you get programmed, you can feel the shock go through your body, and it takes a little while for it to settle in. And then it takes a couple of days for it to really find its level, and even then it could be like a few weeks before you know how it's going to be. So the fact that he would see me for 2 hours, he would program it, and I would live with it. I would try things. I would do the testing. I would do the and we could see what was better and what was working, what was not working. And
can I interject for 1 minute?
Sure.
I think another major difference is the time that was being spent between appointments, because when we would go to his previous doctor, it would be a beautiful relationship in regards to, how are you? Let's have a conversation. Okay, let's see what we can do about this. And we'll change this number or we'll change that number. Can you feel it? These are just jargon that you would use during an appointment. Can you feel it? Can you feel a difference? This was what was very different from a care partner's perspective. Okay, this is what would be the end of the appointment previously to Dr. Fazal. Okay, Charlene, let's go down and you guys have some lunch in the cafeteria. Let's wait 20 minutes to see how he does. And then if there's a problem, you come back. Now, first of all, I had a brain trauma in 2009. His surgery wasn't until 2011. It took me 4 years to even be able to have decent conversations with my children. My poor daughter, Sophia, she had a lot to deal with me. So here I would be going with him to the cafeteria, watching him to figure out what does this mean? I'm just afraid I'm not able to drive home safely. Now I have to see what signs am I looking for? So
I would literally
one
be
of the
banging my head
signs
against the
was
wall.
Joe would bang his head against the wall because it was not working right. So I would literally have to put my hand between the brick wall of the cafe and his head, so that he wouldn't bang his head against the wall. And then I would have to say, oh, everything's okay. Everything's okay, because I still have to drive home. So what happens is you normalize chaos. You normalize that this is okay, that my husband is banging his head against the table because no one else has this. Who can I ask if this is real, if this is the way it's supposed to be or not? So you just normalize that. Oh yeah, Daddy's doing good. I mean, he banged his head a few times against the wall, but everything's fine. What's for dinner, Ma? Okay, I'll get dinner made, and
Great.
I'll just move on for the day.
Xander wants to say something.
Now, okay, let me just finish. But now, when I went to Dr. Fazal, it wasn't my job to make sure he was okay. It was his job. And he didn't put that on me. So I was able to leave the appointment and say, okay, I trust that he's not going to bang his head against the wall. Because the first few times I went to him, I would say something like, okay, what do I have to look for? Do we have to wait here? I expected that he would be.
These
That
are
was
wait,
part and
these are
parcel
waiting
of
in the
the
appointment.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
yeah.
anyway, that's something that's very important. Is that
Yeah.
I wish if I was the FDA regulator, that I think that there should be a specific constant licensing of people who are programming, because we are at the mercy of the person who is programming
Yeah.
the DBS.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible because I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix him. I couldn't keep him from banging his head because I had no control over it.
Right.
I had to wait till it finished its through the cycle. So anyway,
Right.
that's all I wanted to say about that. And that was a miracle what had happened
Yeah.
when we went, and he went from talking very little to talking and talking and talking, and then me finally saying, "Oh my gosh, I have a partner again."
Yeah. Xander, what were you going to say?
Thank you. So I actually do remember something from that point in time. So I remember when my dad couldn't like really speak that much. And so what we would do is I would ask him a question and I'd be like, "Hey, do you want dinner?" And he'd blink. And then like I'd have to like translate his blinks into my brain. And like I mostly got it correct.
Right.
He'd be like, and I'd be like, "Okay, I'll get you some." Or he'd be like, and I'd be like, "All right, okay." It really just like we found out like our own little language to speak, because we couldn't actually speak, so we just
Even,
communicated in random ways.
even when I did speak, my voice was so low you couldn't understand what I was saying.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes I still can't, but you're much better than you were when I was 9.
Right. So, we're looking at 5 years since you sort of got that good programming. Yes.
Yes.
And what has obviously you could walk, you could do a lot more than you could, do before. Where are you at this point? And
I'm
what has
writing.
changed?
I'm writing again. I take walks on a daily basis. I participate at church. I help make videos, little acting videos for my church. We do. I was able to come to Kansas City, which I never would have been able to do in those years.
I think one of the big differences that I've noticed, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, Dad, but I think one of the big differences is in your care of Aria versus your care of Xander as a baby. In the sense that with Xander, I think for a lot of us, we were afraid of you holding Xander as a baby.
Yeah.
Because you were just not doing well, and this was pre-DBS. And even as Xander got older, he would have dances at school that like our parents could go to, and Xander would always have to bring 2. Everybody else could bring 1, but Xander always had 2 because Dad couldn't walk.
Me and my wheelchair and my brother-in-law would
Exactly. And the last year, there was I make fun of my mom sometimes because whenever there's a big Parkinson's accomplishment, she'll post a several paragraph long Facebook post about how wonderful my father is doing. But I do remember that one did make me cry, seeing the difference between the year before when Dad's in a wheelchair, not really moving, and our uncle was also there, to the next year, and it was Xander's last year in elementary school, and Dad was walking again. And that, I think, for me was a very, very like profound moment, and really did show how much Dr. Fazal had changed our lives. But then also, again, with Aria's BFF is her Poppy, which is Dad. And he can hold her and carry her around. You guys will see in the thumbnail of this video, he's carrying her all the time. And that's something we couldn't do with Xander when he was a baby.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Joe, I think that this is, what you've gone through from the terrible diagnosis process to, the medications, and now DBS and not working, you have so much to offer people that are in just the depths and saying, oh my gosh, nothing's going to get better. This is pointless. Like my life is over. What do you want to share with them?
I mean, for me, whenever I talk to somebody who's newly diagnosed, I say, first get yourself a movement disorder specialist, then get yourself a good movement disorder specialist, because neurology is so compartmentalized. There's concussions, there's nerve damage, there's spinal damage, there's Parkinson. There's all these mini silos within neurology. And people think, oh, you're a neurologist. That's all I need. You don't. You need someone who's a movement disorder specialist, and more important, somebody who will listen to you, somebody who will take the time to be with you and to work on your case. And because it's the old thing that I say: when you meet one person with Parkinson's, you met one person with Parkinson's. So,
right.
I mean, I got lucky that I had to look for a new doctor, and when I found Dr. Fazal, I mean, he changed my life in such profound ways. It's unbelievable. I'm forever grateful to him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about what you're doing now, what you're doing in the community as an advocate, as a Parkinson's ambassador, as an ambassador for the Davis Finney Foundation, and you have the ability to impact so many people that you might not have been able to impact if you hadn't gotten him as a doctor, right? So that's good in so many ways.
Yeah.
Why did you become an ambassador, and what are you doing?
I mean, I became an ambassador because I'm lucky to have come from that dark time into a bit of a light period, and if I could share that that's the baby. If I could share that my click success, I want to do that.
Yeah. Well, we love having you. Charlene, what about you? What would you want for Parkinson's care partners to know about this very long road you've been on and where you are now?
I think that the two of the elements that have really helped me and that might help other people would be to try to stay within the moment that you are that you're coping with at that time, because projecting can make you extremely sad. And if you can maintain some sort of hope, that is what really matters. That's one of the biggest sources of energy for me is hope. And the other thing that's very important is trying to make sure that you keep a good sense of humor. I don't know how to do that. I don't know.
Well, you get the two funniest people in the world, and you birth one and marry one.
So,
Me, I'm the one.
Joe and I met because one of the things we did, we met in high school. We were in a school play together, and I had just told this to his cousin yesterday that I had an illness, I had mono in high school, and he had loaned me his VHS tapes of that comedy Soap. It used to be on in the 70s, and that was when we knew we loved each other, is that we loved laughing. And I think that's what, for me, the only information I can share is information that I have through experience.
Yeah, I mean,
I think my experiences can be of help to someone else. I'm so willing to provide any information that I have, but I'm only learning through experience, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
I mean, we had to deal with Parkinson's, but the rest of life doesn't stop. So we have two teenage daughters at the time, and then we have a baby, and we have to do that while I have Parkinson's, while Charlene is taking care of me. And Charlene has been Herculean in her care of me. It's been unbelievable. And she's a young person doing this. This is traditionally an older person's disease, and we've been dealing with it since our 20s. So when we meet things with laughter, because we'd rather laugh than cry. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I want to hear just from each of you, the kids. There's a lot of kids whose parents have Parkinson's, and there are a lot more that are coming. There are a lot more people getting diagnosed early. Kids are at home, kids are young, kids are teenagers. Kids do not want their parent to have Parkinson's and to mess up their life, right? What do you have to share with kids that are growing up with parents with Parkinson's that you want them to know?
Well, I think all three of us obviously have a very different perspective on Parkinson's. So I'll say just mine. If your initial reaction to your parent being diagnosed with Parkinson's is fear, I would say get involved. I am our team captain, and I have been since I was 16 years old for our Unity Walk team in New York City. We have, oh, that's my aunt.
Yeah, I've watched this family struggle through Parkinson's, but they have shown us all what true strength is. That's
Hi,
awesome.
Jessie.
Great.
Oh, that's so exciting. But I think for me, so working for the Davis Finney Foundation has really given me a much bigger sense of peace than I had. I believe out of the three of us, I'm the big Parkinson's one, which both of you would agree. But that's what I would suggest. If your initial fear or initial reaction is fear, learn, because that's the best thing that you can do.
I love that. Thank you. Sophia.
I don't really know. I would
If
say
you don't have anything, that's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I don't really understand the question. I think it's like, what do I recommend doing as a child with Parkinson's?
Yeah, like if you have anything to offer other children whose parents, are growing up with their parent who has Parkinson's.
Yeah, you can skip me. I'm sorry. I'm just.
That's okay. I'll skip you. Xander, come on, give me something funny. I have a feeling it's gonna be funny.
I got you. So two things. The first thing is that it's not the end of the world. If your parent has Parkinson's disease, you still have a parent. And it might seem like they're gone, or like there's not going to be any, like, they're not going to be the same, but you still have a parent and you still have a relationship with your parent, and they still care about you, even if their face makes it seem like they're mad at you 24/7. Really, everything's going to be okay. And it might not be like normal. And you might see other kids like walking around with their dads and being like, let's go play some sports. And you can't. And that's okay, because you have your own things you have with your parent. I keep assuming that your parent is a man. But like,
Plenty of women with Parkinson's.
Yeah, there's plenty of women with Parkinson's disease. So just it's not over. You still have a parent. You're still gonna be okay. They're still gonna be okay. They're not dying. So
right. That's great. Polly says, thank you, Narciso family, for showing up today and sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Polly. Yeah, it was really nice to talk to all of you. Because I work with Sam, this is just even more great to just see the whole constellation of her life on one screen. Super fun. Love having you as an ambassador, Joe. Charlene, very, very nice to meet you. I love that I get to meet the mom of somebody I work with. And Sophia and Xander, super great to meet both of you. And really love what you had to offer today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for letting us do this and share our story.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a
Bye.
lovely day.
Bye.